belong to a group called Forward for women's autonomy, rights, and dignity. And I found documentation from Canadian authorities on the poor were a necessity for society. Because the rich, I wish I knew the exact quote. In other words, the rich were too genteel a people to work.
Yeah.
But the poor could do the work. And without the poor, we can't prosper. So the poor become an absolute necessity for anything to help in a society because it's cheap labor. And that's exactly what happened in 1994 when NAFTA started. They immediately took thousands of jobs away from people, but suddenly you have thousands more people looking for work. So you have this massive pool of humans fighting for jobs. I remember going in to look for a job, and almost everybody in there was Mongoloid. Because we took them out of their homes, we gave them apartments, we taught them, you can be an adult, you can cook your own food, you can do this, you don't have to sit in... 50, 60 years ago, people put these Mongoloid children in an attic and hid them from the public. And I had a friend, David Woodall, and he was one of the first people who, when he started a school, he didn't call them Bobby and Billy. He said Robert. He called them by their proper names, like men. And suddenly you got this change, They wanted to work, they wanted to be part of something, And that he changed the whole concept of how to treat. They're human beings, for God's sakes, right? Treat them with dignity. And that's when it started. But I remember walking in there, and there they were. They could do simple jobs, right? And I just walked out because I looked at them and I thought, I'm not going to take a job from you. With my brains, I should be able to find something more, but I'm not going to steal it from them. Because all they can do is very simple tasks, right? And I could do more. The thing is that there's a lot more people after the jobs I was after too. I worked in a place where most of us, all we did was answer the phone for some stupid American company that was illegally in Canada, and we were trying to get people to get in, young people to go into the Iraq War.
Yeah.
The job was so immoral, but I was lucky if I got 10 hours of work a week, maybe 15. That's how they get you like this, to do jobs that you do not want. But I'd be talking to young people on the phone. For Latinas in California, they knew that they were home at school at 4. And they were phoning those homes. And it was so nice to get, hello, they'd hear a woman's voice and talk. And I'm sorry, ma'am, my father said not to answer any phone calls. Click. Because they try to get their names so that they knock on the door and they get these kids to join the army and they don't even know what's going on. Parents don't even know that they've signed papers. They manipulate them into doing that. And then you know about Mexico, right? The number that went to the Iraq War, and the Americans promised to bury them and never gave a penny to the families. I remember that. When the bodies start coming home from the Iraq War. That's what I mean, the Mexican journalist who was working on that, she actually went on a boat because they were trying to sell to the Mexican young people, you're going to get in the American army because we're just like the best ever. They aren't. They're one of the worst armies in the world. All they got is a bunch of bombs. But they're not disciplined. They're not anything. They don't even know how to fight. And she got on a boat. So she's interviewing Mexicans from Mexico, right?
Okay.
So what do you do? Because they're being told that they can get to be chefs, they can get to be this and that. So well, I peel potatoes, In the background, she has a prayer going on, like a real religious right prayer. Lord Jesus, Lord, this kind of stuff. It was beautiful how she's getting answers from these Mexicans. So like they show them that when the planes come in, the Mexicans get to wave them down. Are you kidding me? They're not even allowed on the thing. The Mexicans were doing all the lowest work that there was. They never got any position of value at all. And then when they died, they just sent them their bodies back and didn't pay for the funerals like they promised. But she was excellent because you could hear the prayer going on, and she continued the interview, and she must have heard the prayer and thought, that's what I'm going to. The next time they start that prayer, I'm going to start interviewing that prayer going on. And she did that. She did it in such a way that you just went, yeah. It was a whole other world, and these young people didn't catch on. The promise that they were maybe going to be allowed to come to the United States, right? The promise that they could, oh, please, people, stop going to the United States. There are 195 other countries on the planet. They'd love to see you. You know, it's true. There's better schools, there's better education, there's better life skills that teach you. I don't know why people keep on going to the States. And right now, not even Canada. I wouldn't encourage anybody to go to Canada. Not with the racism that's there right now. Our racism crimes have gone up by 465% since Trump got in power. So they've been sending Americans into Canada probably for the last 15, 20 years, teaching that hatred. Getting Canadians to get angry, blaming everybody, blaming the Muslims because they don't have a job, right?
Okay.
See, the Muslims are coming here and they're getting all the jobs. I tell two people the reason we have Muslims because of the American wars. If they didn't have the wars, we wouldn't have these people in this country. Do you really think people want to come and live in an iceberg? Canada's cold.
Okay.
They come from these hot countries. If I had lived in a village and I had my goats, I'd be happy as can be. And then I end up in a city full of people from all over the world, and you feel so low and insignificant, and there's not the money like before to help them out. There's all kinds of lies saying, oh, they give them $3,000 a month to live on. Bullshit. Bullshit, they don't. It's all lies. It's all propaganda that comes from that Fraser Institute. The Americans. And it's funded by Microsoft, by Xerox, by major American corporations. So this isn't just, like, this is imperialism, right? It's not just a government, it's businesses that back up all of these plans, and we're doing the same thing in Peru, Colombia, Panama, everywhere I'm going, it's the same thing. I'm seeing the same thing. But Mexico, you don't let anybody buy your land. You don't let them become citizens. You're much smarter. I wish Canada had done that, had the brains to, yeah, you can come in and have a business, but you pay taxes and you can't buy land. You can't become a citizen. And we should have done that, because now we've lost our country because of it, right? We have, no. So it doesn't take much for me to get into social activism. I'm really a human rights activist. But it is strange to now travel and find myself, people looking at me as if I'm rich, when that suitcase is all I've got. That's the end. And I'm having people, what's interesting, it's not the poor that are looking at me like that. It's people that are more upper class, middle and upper class from these countries. Because if I've got anything stolen from me, it's that group that steals from me. It's not the poor. Because, and it's the same in Canada, the people who are committing the most fraud are the middle and upper class, because they're losing stuff, and they think it's their right to have it. So it's perfectly fine to them to steal. For example, we have funding for a university, OSAP, and the middle class have been stealing that money. Their children go to a university and say, my mom and dad and I were all fighting, so I need this money. In the meantime, the father's making $200,000 a year, and he doesn't want to pay for the education. So One guy explained it to me. He said his father was into mining. He made a shitload of money every year, and he turned around, and what they were doing, this guy was given more money than me with 2 children. This single young man, 20 years of age, was given more money a year for university than me. He said his father took the $10,000 and put it in investments. So over a 4-year course, they had $40,000 that they could turn into $200,000, $400,000, $500,000 through investments. And that's money for the poor. All of that money is for poor young kids. And his father gets him a cheap place to rent, or friends where he can live, sets everything up for him, so he can drink all the beer he wants. The poor kids are living off the university, eating macaroni and cheese most of the day. That's all their food is. And he's eating whatever he wants, his hamburgers and pizzas and inequality. But those young people are a real problem when it comes to social activism, because when we started Occupy, the Occupy movement, which the States likes to think they started, you get there, and one of the first things you hear from them, many of them are religious, is that nobody's allowed to swear. No. Now you have people that are part of that movement that are homeless, that are living on the street, and they're not allowed to swear because these little princesses, yeah, oh, you can't swear in front of me, you can't do this. It's like, fuck off. Here's Granny, and I'll look at them and I'll say, fuck off. Go home and grow up. These people are hungry and you're concerned about a word? A word? One word, and you're offended? You know? And what she's worried about is when she gets out of university, she not only doesn't get a job, she doesn't get the $90,000 a year job that she thinks she's going to get. She's lucky if she'll get a $30,000 one. Lucky. And sometimes the only reason they'll give them a job is if it's a specific job where they need somebody pretty, if she's pretty.
Okay.
And they aren't always pretty, the rich girls. Some of them are pretty on the other side of town. The parents eat junk. It shocks me when I see the wealthy and the junk that they eat. You would think that they would have somebody come in and make good soups, and you know what I mean? If I had money, I wouldn't open a can of food. That's your soup for the day? It's beyond me. Like, to me, to be rich is to have good food to eat. But I never saw it. I worked one time after I got back from Mexico the first time for a wealthy Canadian. He's a multimillionaire. And I was asked to clean the servant's house.
What?
The servant was a nurse, okay? So I'm cleaning her home, and she said, well, come on over, there's some food. So I thought, wow, it's going to be fantastic. She's a nurse, great soup. A cupboard full of canned soup. I mean, it was this wide, full of canned soup. Okay, he has a heart